The revelation in language is to point out, to write, the message, the inspiration, or the invisible words. In the ancient Egyptian civilization, the same meaning is of a decision, or a judgment, or an advice, or a miracle that bears a will or a divine wish was found. In the same time, it bears the answer of the god in a subject, or a request like the revelation subject. The revelation in ancient Egypt is an unusual habit. In it, there was a request about a certain subject, about which the reply of the deity is required. Accordingly, the revelation was connected in place with temples. As for its subject, it could be related with a political problem that's concerned with the country or the king, or a judicial or position-wise, or connected with simple individual problems. There was a variety in the subjects for which a revelation calling was required, as well as the ways of using it. Either it was a direct revelation confronting the god, or the revelation of rituals or dreams revelation. It was noticed that the revelation is usually connected with the future, but in very limited cases it was connected with a past time, especially the cases of robbery and assault. In spite that the revelation could be the will of the mighty divine, but its decision could be either persecuted by the one who asks for it or not, whether it was in accordance with his will or not. He could also apply for a revelation from another god, hoping to receive a call that fulfills his wishes. The prophecy, on the other hand, is an announcement of a divine wish that wasn't asked for or requested, which means that it was a spontaneous habit not called for. The order of the prophecy must be accomplished. Usually, the prophecy takes a narrative style, for it's told by the one who prophesied in a literary form that's usually related to political events. The prophecy was known in the ancient Egyptian civilization before the divine revelation was known. For the most ancient and examples known of the prophecy goes back to the Old Kingdom era in what's known as the Papyrus of Westcar. The cause of that could be the circumstances and events that required its existence back then, when the kings of the 5th dynasty faced the problem of the royal blood and the legitimacy of the kingship. There had to be a way out of that dilemma that justifies their rising to the throne in front of the people and prove their legal right to establish stability in the political conditions. The prophecy was a political advertisement in the favor of the ruling dynasty, in the image of tales and imaginative stories. The Egyptian prophecy was concerned with just the political events. The word serut was used to mean the prophecy, and it's derived from the word ser, which means to announce or prophesy, and the verb in general could mean to know a certain event that points to the future. The habit of exploring the future is an ancient habit known in the ancient Egyptian literature. We can bring a proof to that in the dialogue between the wise man Neferti and King Senefro, when the first asked him what would he like to know about, whether it was the events of the past or the future. The king answered, "What's going to happen for the present, once it happened, is a past." This shows a will to know the destinies and the unknown future events, especially that there was a belief for the Egyptians that fate and destinies are set at birth, when the 7 Hathors were responsible for the fate of the newborn. The literature texts kept for us many stories that were based on predicting the fate and what's about to happen. Among these stories, the story of the fate of the prince, and the story of the brothers, and the story of the survival of the sailor. prophecy in ancient Egypt had interfered in the job opportunities and fields, for some of the texts point to the writers who used to perform revelation activities. In the ancient Egyptian thoughts, there was a strong belief that there were happy days and jinx days, which they tried to avoid and avoid doing any work in them. The Egyptians also knew what's known as the table of the stars or planets, as a mean to predict what's related to life or death. So we find in one of the magical papyri a text which says, "Take the ill man to his bed, and the name he acquired upon his birth, and calculate the cycle of the moon, and look at the numbers on top of the board. If it equals a number in the upper part, he'll live, and if it's in the lower part, he'll die." In the fable of the two brothers, the seven Hathors predicted the story of Bata and his wife, whom the Hathors predicted that she'll die with a knife. The political prophecy is represented in West Kar papyrus, called Cheops and the Magicians, and the prophecies of Neferti, and the prophecy of pregnancy, and the prophecy of the pottery maker. The divine revelation played a vital role in the thoughts and culture of the people of the ancient world in general, and the ancient Egyptians in particular. Thus, it was a way out of despair in the corrupted judicial conditions. In a way, it was a piousness of the Egyptian and his trust in his gods, and their control of his abilities, that he resorts to them, asking them to achieve his requests and fulfill his complaint. It had such a huge impact on the spirits of the ancient Egyptians, so it was a savior of the kings themselves, to allow them to come out to their people, confirming the legitimacy of the rule and power if some of them faced the problems of the non-legitimacy. It wasn't known exactly when the operation of consulting the oracle in ancient Egypt started, for the oldest known cases don't go back to any known period before the 18th dynasty. There were many ancient Egyptian words that meant the revelation, some of which were used as words and others directly meant the word revelation, in addition to some other expressions that could be understood from texts and were used in some singular cases. The most well-known words that were used to mean the revelation were three words: Biajet, Hertu, and Nejutra. None of these words point to a certain type of revelation or a category of those who ask for the revelation, but in particular, they were used in different times. For example, the word Nejutra was used after the 18th dynasty, and the word Hertu was used after the 22nd dynasty. The word Biajet, or the revelation, came in the Egyptian language dictionaries in more than one, close meaning to mean a miracle or a wonder or a divine revelation. Thus it was connected with the revelation and the divine miracles. In case it wasn't used to mean the divine revelation, it could be used in one of two conditions or two different cases. The first to express directly the will of the god, while in the second case, and it's the most common, it's when the god is called to tell his opinion in some subject, and that's how it could be a reply to asking a revelation from God. This word came to use since the 18th dynasty in many of the revelation texts, including Ani's instructions and the text of the coronation of Queen Hatshepsut, and the text of the coronation of Thutmose III, and the text of the great priest of Amun Herihor in the temple of Gat-Khonsu in Karnak. Through the different texts in which this word came, we can understand that the word doesn't point to a certain style of the divine revelation as much as it bears a signal or a proof from the side of the god to himself, and the word meant a miracle that forms a divine revelation until the Greek-Roman period. There are many ways to ask for the revelation of the gods in ancient Egypt, of which three main ways are mentioned. The first of these ways is the direct way, and that happens when the god talks to himself, embodies in his statue, or his sacred boat, or his sacred animal. This is the oldest and most common way. The second way is to bring the revelation and question it, happened in the form of divine rituals, which usually happened in the favor of a person. The rituals that were attached to the divine revelation were known since the 19th dynasty. For these rituals were answers from the god about a certain request or subject or dilemma introduced to him. The essential difference between that way and the direct revelation is just in its being written and is introduced as being a revelation of God without showing the request of the revelation and waiting for his answer. The priests are the ones responsible for declaring and introducing these rituals to the people for being a divine revelation. The third way happens through dreams, and that's through the meeting of the sleeper with the world of gods in the dreams. Thus the dreams played an important role as means of the connection of the sleeper with the world of gods and expressing what's going in the minds of the gods. By that, dreams became means through which the answer is received. The connection between dreams and revelation has appeared in what's known as the incubation in the temple. The direct divine revelation was the most important way used in revelations. It happened by the meeting of the revelation seeker with a god, directly asking him a question verbally or writing down his deed. The god transfigurated in such sittings, either in his sacred bark, which appeared in the parades of festivals, holding his statue within, or by talking to the statue of the god that's placed in the temple and hearing his answers. In ancient Egypt, revelations played a great role in the social life of the people. The request of the one who asks for the revelation was presented to the god verbally or written in brief or in details, depending on several reasons, at the front of which the time that's permitted for the one who asks for revelation to talk to the god one-on-one. The ancient Egyptian was always certain that the god knows all the details of his complaint, but he never had the chance to tell it. Thus he becomes very assured towards the judgment of the god and his decision in his request. Then he waits to get a reply from the god as an answer to the revelation in the form of a picture or a sound or a signal. The operation of calling the revelation of the god by the king and the high priests has been subjected to a form of the protocol forms and the manners of speech in a way more formal that happened through many steps that are complicated, and through these rituals the god is pulled in and is praised. For the one who asks for the revelation is someone who is close to the god, and the form that precedes asking for the revelation usually has an impact on the decision of the god to be positive. Among the ways of calling the revelation is talking or addressing the god verbally. That requires a physical presence in front of the god. Many words and actions were mentioned that express the presence of the revelation seeker in front of the god to present his problem or complaint. There are words that point to that in general. It's difficult to put an exact translation to some of these words, for we find this text saying, "The great priest of Amun-Ra arrived in front of the great god," or "The priest Amun-Nacht stood in front of the god." Asking for the revelation in ancient Egypt required a direct talk to the god. Among the forms used in that addressing is a form of imbah, which means in front of or near to. That form is repeated a lot to mean the presence of the high priest in front of the god in particular. That formula is used to confirm the confrontation between the god and the means of the revelation, and so are some verbs like seper and semi and aha. They are verbs that point in their meanings to being present in front of the god. The verb wahm is one of the verbs that are connected with the revelation and holds more than one meaning, for it means the repetition of saying the request to the god, like in the text that says, "Then the great priest of Amun-Ra comes, and the king of gods, Pi Najem, the honest voice, came too, in front of this great god." The second meaning means to talk with respect in front of the god. Thus, it's used in the special cases in which there is a connection between the king and the high priest who is the god, in addition to words and actions that were used or proved in one way or another within the text to tell about the revelation condition. The other way to call for the revelation is by writing, and that's when there was an attempt to ask for the revelation in writing, in case there was no way of asking for the revelation verbally. The two ways could be used together, and this happened by putting the two documents in front of the god, for two documents were placed on both sides of the road through which the god passed during the parade, or in front of or behind the god. The operation of making the revelation act happens, in that case, is by the choice between the two documents through a movement that the god makes by means of the priest who carry his sacred bark.